Hi, everyone. So I want to take this moment to acknowledge and dedicate my awareness to the acknowledgement of country. So you might turn your attention inward and then also outward, dedicating your awareness to this deep, important act, this act of acknowledging ourselves as guests in country and land that we are not ancestrally, culturally, ritualistically, economically tied to traditionally, bringing your attention to acknowledging the traditional owners of the land you are in. And maybe you are one of them, maybe you are in that community. I acknowledge the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the place that I reside within, and their elders past, present, and emerging. I also acknowledge the continuing and devastating impacts of colonial violence and systemic oppression and imperialist occupation. I acknowledge the strength, survival, and thriving of First Nations cultures, societies, sciences, government, kinship, spirituality, ceremony, art. And I acknowledge these communities as leaders of where we must go and how we could be. So, hello, Pabs. Thanks for
Um,
joining me.
Thank you for having me, and what a wonderful acknowledgement. I am on Gadigal Wangal country, just, I guess, west of you. Yeah, west. Lovely.
Lovely.
But no, it's great to see you today.
Yeah, you too. On this, like when I look out my window, it's like this vibrant, autumnal day, and we are a few days into what I would think of as the Samhain tide. Because for me, I often experience the cross quarters as like 2 week events, and all the deciduous trees in my neighborhood have turned, and the wind is quite cold or cool, and the birds are doing weird things. It's quite an event.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that as well. Like, I have a whole avenue of trees in front of me in my home office, and lately the possums aren't as loud as they usually are, which to me tells me that they're probably drawing in, gathering their food. And I actually saw one last night on my walk, just kind of gathering the things and then really quickly scaling into the foliage. So yeah, it's very different from summer shenanigans that possums are known to do. So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have engaged you today to talk with me and those who might listen and watch about the magical mentorship work that I offer, which is either paid or exchange based. And I offer this, I've been offering this for many years now. And at one point, I cannot currently remember the year, you and I worked together for a year in this one-to-one capacity. So I wanted to ask you a few questions about your experience with that. So I guess the first question I would ask is, why did you specifically seek out one-to-one mentorship in general?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So, I was thinking back, so it feels like a forever and a half ago that we did it, but it was back in 2018 that we started. I believe that it was at, I think, funnily enough, either around this time or later, like maybe at solstice, or at Imog. But being completely honest, at the point that I reached out to you as a friend and a mentor to engage in mentorship, I was going, I guess I would call it a point of crisis in terms of my practice and where I saw myself going with respects to my interest and deep desire and love of, I guess, the mystery that is witchcraft and mysticism and sorcery. So I guess I had gone through a period of crisis in I guess my practices previously, and also I feel like in my experience as I guess I'm going to use the term pagan in air quotes because that's a very broad term and we could discuss many hours about what that term actually means. But I think in that when we approach sorcery and witchcraft and paganism, a lot of it is book based. Like we look towards books and we kind of just use that as ways to make our way through and muddy our way through this practice, and it's very rare, I feel, to actually have one-on-one mentorship where you're actually engaging with someone, someone else, a teacher, and you're learning from that person some of the basics, but then being able to deepen practices through that engagement. So personally, I felt by the time that I'd come to see you, I feel like I had quite a lot of knowledge in my head, but it was more of a trying to move that knowledge through body, and that's exactly what you helped me do in that year. So I already had a body of work, so to speak, and it was just a matter of moving it in my body and understanding how that works, with the world around me. And also, I think it's also really good just to have someone say, yeah, that's actually, that's actually okay. Like you're doing, having kind of some things confirmed about the way you're doing things as well. And maybe being shown how to do things in a slightly different way, in a way that you might get better results. So that's exactly why I sought out mentorship with you.
Thank you. That was a really multi-dimensional response, which I'm always in favor of.
Hello, Gemini.
Yeah. My second question to you is, what was it actually like for you to turn up once a month to these formal convergences in which there would be immersive magical process and spirit work, or there would be emotional rigor? And what was it like to do that and then also check in and do that within the period of a container of a year?
Yeah. So what I would say, the word that I would use was discipline, and what you've said, rigor as well. It was really helpful for me to have these monthly containers where I would work from month to month with you, and then show up with a check-in, or actually do some work, which we kind of, at times it was co-created, or at times I remember you saying, I think we should do this, and we would go into that, and we would get work done, and then I could feel the almost reverberations immediately as that kind of moved through the different layers of my being. So it was really like I would liken it to almost like an apprenticeship, in the sense that every month we came together and there was a set piece of work, and then I would maybe go away and work with it a little more, and then I would either check in with you, or you would just trust the fact that it was with me, and then I would take it in whatever way that I wanted to. But definitely the two words that come to mind is rigor and discipline. But not in like a bad way. It's just kind of, it was nice. It was really nice to have that opportunity in that space to dedicate to the magical work.
I definitely feel that one of my life, like one of the threads of my life's passion, is to help people remember that discipline can be nourishing. Yes, so that's definitely great to hear. So I also want to know, how did this work impact your magical life, impact your practice? How did you notice that?
Yes. So I think two words that I would use as to describe the result of this was deeply pragmatic, but also deeply mystical sorceress. So again, it really just solidified practice in body and noticing. I became really good at noticing the world around me, but also how I was feeling, and it gave me just a deeper sense of self awareness of my own self, but also of the spirits, and like the court of spirits and gods that I work with, that are constantly surrounding me, and becoming more aware of that. That was that kind of it really allowed me to tap into that resource, if you want to call it that, and have healthier relationship with allies as well, both inland and in the other spirits that kind of revolve around me. So it was really noticeable, the way that it affected my practice, and it, I guess, fed and nourished my practice, and really, again, as you said, nourish it through that idea of discipline and the teaching of discipline in that. So it was really helpful. I found it really wonderful.
Awesome. Do you have any questions for me?
I do, because I just wanted to ask. So I guess, why do you do this work? Why do you offer these mentorships, Theo?
So, yeah, one of the reasons is because I don't believe that in order to be a successful witch or occultist or spirit worker, you have to be in a tradition. And people who are working in those ways outside of covenants, outside of witch houses, outside of lodges, deserve and are worthy of training. And sometimes, like, the rigor and context of certain law-based training does come from within traditions. And so because of the carrying and the culture around that, and because I'd been stewed in the cauldrons of various traditions, I knew there was a way to offer the technique and framework and guts of things without breaking any of my oaths. So I knew that there was a way to do that. And I've always been passionate about actual practice, actual skill, and actual results. Like you, like in the world of pagandom, I have seen and witnessed a lot of, I guess, double speak, a lot of armchair occultism, people who like kind of suggest that they know things or know how to do things, but actually when shit hits the fan, there's not a lot of efficacy around. And so having grown up in a family where magic was common and practiced, I got a very early kind of eye into what it actually means on the ground, which is that you want results. It's not a metaphor. It also deeply impacts your entire psyche, and there ought to be some discipline and grounding, and everything happens through the body. So my philosophy and my ethos is body-based, and I also want to bring back kind of these strange concepts and abstract notions into the crucible and the compass of body, because that's when it all makes sense. So there are some words I just don't use very much because I think they're a bit fragmenting. There are concepts that I don't teach because I actually think that they come from a paradigm and a worldview of duality that I don't think serves ecstatic magic. So there's a lot of work that I feel drawn to participate in, which is inherently about deconditioning and unraveling certain, I would say, capitalistic, imperialistic, and Christianist ideas that a lot of us have unconsciously, subconsciously been watered with. And so I do think that a lot of witchcraft and practical occultism and spirit work is about identifying these complexes and beginning to confront, work through, transmute, purify, and come to a place where we understand ourselves as peers with the spirits, not as subservient, not in submissive roles, but in dynamic, synergistic partnership. And so that's why I want to do this, because I see these people, and sometimes people who I'm working with are initiated in multiple traditions and highly advanced and but there might be a particular track that they want to really get into. And so I just feel like offering this work, and being justly compensated for the labor of it is a really important service to the broader network. And offering, here's a pathway for those of you who don't want to, or you're over or cannot access that in particular other ways that are maybe conventional.
Wow, yeah, that's a very lush answer, and yeah, the body piece that you mentioned definitely resonates with me, because from my experience working with you, it definitely became a embodied experience and practice. And I like that idea of like noticing the different complexes and then trying to work with work them out, so to speak. And I like to consider like rewilding. Like I think the magic that we do, or the magic that I and the practices you gave me, I feel like I've become more feral, and it's great. Like I've more with the spirits. So that's really lovely. That's great. Thank you for that. Um, the other question I had, so that was really lovely. Like you've given us some really like beautiful poetry of what it is to do the work and the sorcery, the mysticism. But how does it actually work? Like on a pragmatic, practical level, how would someone, if I was someone who didn't know you, who didn't have the privilege of knowing you in the way that I know you, as how would it work with you? How do I get in contact with you?
Yeah, so um, traditionally with this, I have the approach of people who are applying for this, I need to have met you, whether that was just once at a workshop or at a public ritual or at a witch camp or in a store. Like, it's good for me to have had that touchstone and for you to have had that touchstone. I am open to negotiation on that, but through several preliminary meetings. So that takes work. Um, because of the investment of this, usually people work with me for between 9 to 13 months. And because it's a particular kind of, I see it as a working. I see the work that I'm doing with another person as a spell. And so it takes 9 to 13 months. And so the way in which people can actually, access that is, of course, go to the part of my website that links you to this particular Google form, which you apply through, which we'll put the link below. But in terms of how it actually looks and actually is, so every month in one-on-one mentorship, there's a 1 hour formal convergence is the word I use, in which what happens is we breathe together, we acknowledge together, and we might ground or we might align our souls if that's a skill that I passed on at that point, or you already know maybe. And then there's a check-in. But that check-in is usually shorter and more pithy because it's based on email check-ins that are sent between the sessions for me to track your work and track your kind of emotional life, whatever you're willing to share. And then we get to the body. I would say 40 minutes of the actual hour is a body of work. So that could be, if someone wants to particularly study aspecting and oracular trance prophecy with me, then we'll do something there, right? So it's often me guiding and facilitating a particular process that's building over the month. So skills are building, experiences are becoming layered, or it might be that, we travel into the other world, or it might be that we practice tarot, or we might go into the well of weird and talk to the weird sisters. It really depends on the person. So as I'm developing an awareness of the person, I'm developing an awareness of who their spirits are, who their gods are, something about their ancestral magic, and we're working with that. So a lot of the checking in through emails and through the convergences helps me get a big picture. I've also had the feedback a lot that I am quite, that a lot of people tell me I'm quite intuitive with how I do this. So I might whip something out without consciously understanding what it's for. And at the end, often the person goes, thank you, that's exactly what I needed, exactly what I wanted, that serves what I'm doing. So I let my inner court of spirits also come through in this, because they are helping spirits and they want to help people get really good at magic. So yeah, we meet once a month for an hour. There are at least 2 email check-ins of like less than 500 words between the sessions, so I can actually take it in. And then, the rest is up to the person. Like, the rest is really up to the individual to deepen. Sometimes I send video recordings, Google documents, attachments of written up processes, not every month, but, I'd say every second or third month. And so there's also those resources as well. Sometimes people are doing this alongside studies in formal traditions or formal magical systems. And so they often will come to me for that, I guess, ecstatic, intuitive, body-based work to go alongside. Yeah, so really it's quite simple. The frameworking is quite simple. In terms of exchange, this is all in Australian dollars. There's a sliding scale of 70 to 120 Australian dollars, which covers the month, right? So if someone decides that say they have a session in January and in February they're like, actually I can't, which happens, I don't charge them for that month. Like, I just don't. And it's not like I dropped the thread, but my attention's not on it. So the thread's still there, but I'm not looking at it fiercely. I have books of notes on these sessions and things like that, which help me to track as well. But yeah, people can take little breaks. That's so welcome. That's so fine and so normal. And I'm beginning to experiment with small group mentorships, which is me turning up to a pre-established group or a group of friends or a group of kin, ideally 3 to 4. And at the moment, I'm not sure what the just compensation is. Like I'm like with Pabs's help just before, I'm thinking like, you know, a sliding scale of 100 to 250 makes sense, because that's still, you know, cheaper than the one-to-one. The difference is like we all turn up together. Therefore, you all get to pay a portion of that greater price. And there's no email check-ins because it would be weird. But maybe we would set up a Google Doc where we would all write notes, and I could read that, you know, maybe with less ferocity than if it was one-to-one, but I'd still check. So the group mentorship is definitely my new experimental edge, but I'm so open to that because people have begun to ask about that, like small circles or small covens who might want that assistance and help. I know for me, I have always sought out external human assistance and help in the form of mentors, guides, teachers, provocateurs. I always notice I tend to be taking a course. I tend to be doing something. I've studied in 4 traditions of the craft. And like, I find that for me, the deep weaving of the white thread, so that what I get from the spirits, which is just as legitimate, just as powerful, and the red thread, what is passed from human to human, together, that forms the great, you know, rose of the craft. So that's very much my philosophy, is you know, with weaving this white and red thread into the body of you, right? And so I'm just trying to think if there are any other pieces other than that 1 hour, the email check-ins, the exchange. Yeah, and the time I mentioned, 9 to 13 months. So the reason I say that is because I don't personally like to, like, you got to really, like I say, if you're applying, do divination, ask around, you know, check what other people's experiences are. At this point, there have been quite a lot of people who have done this work with me, so you can ask, because chances are, if my prerequisite is you and I have met, you know these people, like in this broad network. So feel free to ask. I'm happy. I think that's important. Check. And yeah, so I would say that about that too. And I personally am not a fan of starting a mentorship and bringing all that energy and it ending in 3 months. Of course, I never say, you know, of course, if that's what happens in your life, because shit happens, that happens. But my desire is that it's, you know, 9 to 13 months, because actual changes can happen. Yeah.
That's really helpful, and again, a lot for people to chew on, and there's like lots of information. And so if people want to check in with you, obviously you said you'd put your details on the link, right? Is that correct, Fio? And I'm more than happy to, you know, if people want to field questions with me, like I'd be more than happy for you to give them my details as well. I'm happy to have a further chat. But also, like, I think it's I feel like the work that you do is so important, and obviously really grateful that I was able to participate, and you know, it is life changing, and I think it's really important for and these times where people are searching for different skills and more, you know, skills to, you know, connect with their spirits. The work that you offer is invaluable, so thank you so much. And yeah, again, if people want to get in contact with you, your details will be on the link below, as people do. I can chat. I'm, you know, more than happy to chat. And as you said, if people have done a course with you, they most likely will know everybody else that, you know, knows you as well.
Witches are stinky. We all
yes.
So on that note, much love to freaks and witches and gorgeous ones. Have a lovely day and night. Mwah.
Thank you. Bye.